My neighbor was drunk, but what he said about my wife in front of everyone was something no husband could easily tolerate. It was a warm Saturday evening, and our neighborhood was gathered in my backyard for a barbecue. People were laughing, kids were running around the yard, and the smell of burgers and steaks filled the air. I had recently returned home after several years in the army, and I was finally trying to enjoy a quiet life with my wife, Jessica. She was talking with a few neighbors, smiling and making everyone feel welcome like she always did. Most people in the neighborhood liked Jessica, but there was one man who never seemed to respect anyone. His name was Mark. Mark lived across the street, and he had a reputation for showing up drunk and starting trouble. That night was no different. He walked straight to the cooler, grabbed a beer without asking, and started making loud jokes. At first, people ignored him. Then he walked over to the grill where I was standing. He looked at Jessica, smiled in a strange way, and leaned closer to me. "Man, you're a lucky guy," he said loudly. "Your wife is really beautiful." I nodded and turned back to the grill. But Mark wasn't done yet. He laughed and added, "Honestly, if I were you, I'd never leave her alone." The people standing nearby suddenly went quiet. I looked at him and calmly said, "Mark, that's enough." He just laughed again and said, "Relax, man. I'm just joking." At that moment, Jessica turned her head toward us, and the smile on her face slowly disappeared. Jessica slowly walked toward us. The friendly smile she had earlier was gone now, replaced by a serious expression. "Is everything okay?" she asked calmly. Before I could answer, Mark laughed again and lifted his beer. "Oh yeah," he said loudly. "We were just talking about how lucky Daniel is." Jessica looked at him for a moment. She could clearly tell he had been drinking. "Well," she replied firmly, "maybe you should worry about your own life instead of commenting on ours." A few people nearby tried to change the subject, but Mark didn't stop. Instead, he stepped a little closer and smirked. "You take things too seriously," he said. It was just a compliment. The tension in the air was now obvious. Conversations around us had started to fade as people quietly watched what was happening. I took a slow breath and stepped forward. "Mark," I said, keeping my voice calm, "you should probably head home." For a moment, he stared at me like he couldn't believe I had said that. Then he chuckled and shook his head. "Relax, soldier," he said sarcastically. "Don't act tough." Jessica grabbed my arm gently, as if reminding me to stay calm. But the way Mark was looking at her, the way he kept smiling like everything was a joke, it was clear the night was about to get worse. I stepped a little closer to Mark, trying to keep my voice calm. "Listen," I said. "This night was supposed to be about friends and neighbors having a good time. Don't ruin it." For a moment, he looked at me silently. Then he leaned forward slightly and whispered, just loud enough for a few people nearby to hear, "You really think you can tell me what to do?" Jessica immediately stepped between us. "That's enough," she said firmly. "You've had too much to drink." Mark rolled his eyes and raised his hands in the air. "Fine," he said mockingly. "Guess the hero and his wife don't like jokes." A couple standing nearby began gathering their things, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The fun atmosphere of the barbecue was slowly disappearing. I stepped a little closer to Mark, trying to keep my voice calm. "Listen," I said. "This night was supposed to be about friends and neighbors having a good time. Don't ruin it." For a moment, he looked at me silently. Then he leaned forward slightly and whispered, just loud enough for a few people nearby to hear, "You really think you can tell me what to do?" Jessica immediately stepped between us. "That's enough," she said firmly. "You've had too much to drink." Mark rolled his eyes and raised his hands in the air. "Fine," he said mockingly. "Guess the hero and his wife don't like jokes." A couple standing nearby began gathering their things, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The fun atmosphere of the barbecue was slowly disappearing. Mark took one last drink from his bottle and looked around the yard. For the first time that night, he noticed that no one was laughing anymore. People weren't smiling. They were just watching him. The silence seemed to bother him. He shook his head and muttered something under his breath before turning toward the gate. As he walked away, he pointed his bottle toward me and said, "This isn't over, Daniel." Then he pushed the gate open and disappeared into the dark street. For a moment, nobody moved. The barbecue was still going, but the night no longer felt the same. Something had changed. And deep down, I had a feeling that this was only the beginning.